Ladies and gentlemen, I am your glorious Monday Night Raw General Manager. I am Bobby Roode. And ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you here today to this special event. This is the official Bracketology for the upcoming WWE Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax. Now, as you know, there's been a lot of tournaments for championships here in WWE over the past few months. ECW did a Women's Championship tournament. There was a breakout tournament on Heat. And now we have the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax. A tournament I'm very proud of, and I promise will be the biggest and best tournament in the history of North American women's wrestling. Now, recently, with the introduction of the $1 Million Championship on ECW and the Liberty Championship now becoming exclusive to SmackDown, I couldn't let Raw be a championship down, so we will officially introduce the Women's Intercontinental Championship, and the first champion will be crowned on arguably the biggest episode of Monday Night Raw in the show's 30-year history, the Netflix debut on January 6th. Now, the way this tournament will work is it is a round-robin style tournament with two conferences, the North Conference and the South Conference. And the rules are very much in the spirit of being intercontinental, in the spirit of European football, the way their championship tournaments would work. A victory in the tournament gets you 3 points. A draw in the tournament gets you a single point. And a defeat, well, that doesn't get you anything now, does it? Each match will be contested with 15-minute time limits. And if the time limit obviously expires, then you draw. The first games in the North Conference will take place tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw, episode 60 of the TEW 9 Challenge Run. Then the first matches of the South Conference will take place the following week, and so on and so forth until we have the Final Four, which will be also taking place on Monday Night Raw on January 6th on the debut on Netflix, where the winner of the North Conference faces the second place in the South Conference, and the winner of the South Conference will face the second place at the North Conference, and then later on that night, the two winners of those matches will meet each other in the grand final to crown the Women's Intercontinental Champion. Well, with all the formalities out of the way, I've had a tough time over the past 2 or 3 weeks deciphering and finalizing which 12 women will be competing in these two conferences for the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax. And it's time for me to let those 12 lucky women know exactly who they are and let you know who you can expect to see competing on Monday Night Raw over the coming months. The first name added to the North Conference. She's had a hell of a year this year. The winner of the main event of Night 2 of WrestleMania 40, the former WWE Women's Champion. She's been a Raw Women's Champion, she's been a SmackDown Women's Champion, she was already been the inaugural Women's Tag Team Champion, but can Bayley become the inaugural Women's Intercontinental Champion? We've got 10 weeks till we find out. And of course, with one star-studded WrestleMania main event winner heading up the North Conference, that brings me to the one main event WrestleMania winner heading up the South Conference, that being another former Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion, former Royal Rumble winner, the EST, Bianca Belair, the franchise player of Monday Night Raw, coming off a big victory over Tiffany Stratton on this week's episode of Raw. She finds herself heading up the South Conference, and speaking of Tiffany Stratton, that brings me to the second participant in the South Conference, Tiffany Stratton, the winner of the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania this year, one of the fastest rising stars here in Raw's women's division. Her and Bianca Belair will get to do battle again, this time as part of the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax at some time in the next 10 weeks. Another interesting rematch gets to take place in the North Conference when Stephanie Vaquer, the recent tag team partner and ally of Bayley on Monday Night Raw, will be a part of the North Conference, so her and Bayley will go one-on-one at some point in the coming weeks. Does Stephanie have what it takes to capture her first championship in WWE? We'll have to wait and find out. It's sure going to be an exciting ride. That takes me back to the South Conference and more former champions, more top women's stars here on the Monday Night Raw roster. Being Tegan Nox, a former SmackDown Women's Champion, a former Women's Tag Team Champion. She could be the one to call herself the inaugural Women's Intercontinental Champion. Her and Piper Niven have already been over what will happen if the two of them meet in the tournament, and that's going to be that the best woman will win. But Tegan Nox is in the South Conference. And speaking of Piper Niven, she herself is also a part of the South Conference. So Tegan and Piper, that whole friendship's going to be tested when the two of them do battle in the South Conference of the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax. But now we need to hop back over to the North Conference, because joining Bayley and Stephanie Vaquer in there is a woman who is dying for opportunity. All of her stable mates don't get to be a part of this tournament because no women's world champions, no number one contenders for the women's world championships or the women's tag team championships in this tournament. But killer Kelly Costa is looking for that breakout moment. A member of the Misfits under the wing of Becky Lynch. Can she become the first ever women's Intercontinental Champion? We'll have to find out when she joins the North Conference. And speaking of the North Conference, it was announced on Heat this week that I did indeed hand 2 spots in the Climax to members of J-Flow, and they've been bickering back and forth over the past few days, and it comes as no surprise that Mackie will find herself representing one of J-Flow in their 2 spots as a part of the North Conference. And she's a former women's tag team champion in her own right, the sort of talent that a women's Intercontinental Championship can benefit here on Monday Night Raw. Plus, on the South Conference, Tam of J-Flow will be part of the South Conference, teaming up, taking on Tegan Nox, Piper Niven, Tiffany Stratton, and Bianca Belair. And who knows, if her and Mackie can come first or second in their conferences, they may face off against each other in the semi-finals or the grand final. And speaking of J-Flow, not a current member of J-Flow, but Mina Shirakawa did pick up an impressive victory over a former multi-time women's champion Alexa Bliss on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. So she will be joining Mackie and Killer Kelly and Stephanie Vaquer and Bayley as a member of the North Conference. Which brings us to our final 2 participants in the Climax, and I fought long and hard about who to be in here. I dropped and changed some of these names, but I think I've settled on the 2 most deserving women to be a part of the tournament. The first, representing the South Conference, will be Tatum Paxley, a former women's tag team champion in her own right. Been having a lot of issues with Tegan Nox and Piper Niven, and they're going to get those out of each other as part of this tournament, because they are both, all 3 of them, members of the South Conference. And finally, the 12th and final spot. I thought I had this spot locked in, but some events of the past 24 hours changed my mind. You see, at Auckland Assault, NXT's Jada Parker stepped up and took the open challenge from the women's champion Nova Nebula on that premium live event, and she put in one hell of a showing. She made new fans on her first night, showed that intensity that I look for as the general manager of Monday Night Raw. So Jada Parker, Miss Parker herself, will be a member of the Monday Night Raw roster, and not only that, she will be a member of the North Conference of the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax. So there you have your 12 women. One of the 12 women you see in front of you will be the inaugural Women's Intercontinental Champion. Who will it be? Well, we'll have to wait 10 weeks to find out, and what an exciting 10 weeks it's going to be. The greatest tournament for the women in WWE history is about to unfold. Join us and stay seated as our women's division showcases why it is the best in the world. Better than ECW, better than SmackDown, better than anywhere else you can possibly find a women's division. Ladies, the bracket's drawn. The schedule's being finalized. May the best woman win. And all I can say is that the Women's Intercontinental Championship Climax is gonna be absolutely, well, you know the rest.